feeling the repercussions of El Burro. Because if a burrito is a little donkey, then El Burro, the big donkey.
That was a perfect way to introduce this episode. Hello. Welcome to a mini-sode of Dissonant Waves. It is Tricks and Domino time again. Ritz is
Yeah,
away on assignment.
we can actually bring back the dominatrix tagline with this episode.
Very much so. Yeah, so we had some other plans for this mini-sode. We have a few coming up. But last minute things happened and we decided, hey, let's do some movies.
Yeah, horror movies, I guess.
And so I was asked to pick a couple things, and I love The Exorcist. And the first thing I thought of
Who doesn't?
when I love The Exorcist, and like the first thing I thought of aside that was like, we should do cruising as well.
And and I had never heard of cruising.
And there's a really fun connection, and by fun I mean it's fun in a cosmic sense.
The best kind of fun.
Maybe we should start there. Introducing the movies a bit. Cruising, Exorcist. Exorcist 1973, directed by William Friedkin, based on a novel by William Peter Blatty, who himself was a filmmaker. He went on to make the third Exorcist movie, Legion, later on. William Friedkin also made Cruising, based on the novel by Gerald Walker. Now, so the story that I wanted to tell, other than this being directed by the same person, do you remember the hospital scene in The Exorcist?
Yes.
Where they are doing the tests on Reagan, and they have the medical examiners there kind of like helping her through it, telling her what to do, right?
Yep.
So the first guy that talks to her, I think actually all of them, but the first guy in particular is important. They were the actual staff at the hospital they were shooting. And so
all right,
the first guy, William Friedkin, when he's making Cruising, finds out that that first guy is in jail for whatever reason. I believe he was found he had committed murder. So William Friedkin goes to talk to this guy to talk about like what's it like, to murder somebody. Like what's that all about? Because he's making Cruising, and Cruising's based off of a novel, but also based off of like a real life series of murders in like the S&M scene in like New York in like the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And the story goes is that when talking to this guy, William Friedkin realizes, oh, this guy is the murderer. This is the guy.
Huh.
So he ended up making a movie about the guy that he just incidentally cast in his earlier movie.
Huh, that's fascinating. Wow.
And so they're just inexorably linked forever.
What a weird two movies to be linked.
Other than that, their connections are tenuous. They're very different, but in some ways very similar.
Also worth noting that Cruising is the second Al Pacino movie where he gets so deep undercover, he forgets who he is.
What's the first one?
Serpico.
Oh, I've never seen Serpico.
I haven't either, but I just know that that's the premise of it.
That makes sense. Looking here. Yes, Paul Bateson was the actor, the assistant technician, convicted for the murder of a variety theater critic, Addison Verrill, was known as the Trash Bag Killer.
Lame name.
He was eventually released from prison in 2004 and seems to have disappeared completely.
I'd disappear too if my legacy was the Trash Bag Killer.
But yeah, so he might have died, he might not have, but the story goes that Friedkin was convinced that, oh, this is actually the guy that did it for Cruising. So, yeah.
Interesting.
We also did, besides these two movies, we also did Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells too, because, The Exorcist, Tubular Bells.
We already covered Tubular Bells, which I kind of forgot about because we've covered so much goddamn music on this podcast.
In a way, this podcast and these three things make a weird square where it's like, well, obviously The Exorcist and Cruising are connected, and The Exorcist and Tubular Bells are connected. And we've covered Tubular Bells.
Yes, we have.
But we have nothing to do with Cruising until now.
Yes.
So it's like a weird thing going on. Anyway, where do you want to start?
Let's start with The Exorcist.
Okay. One of my favorite horror movies, one of my favorite movies in general, 1973, The Exorcist, based on the novel by William Peter Blatty, which I've read. The novel is very good.
I have not read it, but
I
I have seen The Exorcist 100 times. I feel like.
This is probably my fifth or sixth time. Second time, I think, or maybe the first time seeing the entire director's cut. I can't remember if the director's cut was also the
I
like
don't remember if
2000
I've seen
cut.
the director's cut.
Because like they did a version on DVD in like 2000 where she does like the spider walk. But I feel like this time I saw a lot more footage that was interesting to me. So maybe there was another director's cut for the Blu-ray or not. I don't know.
And interesting. I will say The Exorcist is one of those ones I bust out every Halloween, like Alien and The Thing.
I've never seen the thing, but I have seen
Maybe
Alien. We saw
next
Alien for
horror
the
movie we
show.
watch because I fucking love The Thing.
Now, curious why do you like Alien this and the thing the most?
Uh The Exorcist is just like a classic, and I feel like I have to watch it every Halloween. And it's just a good movie to watch, and like it's really well written and shot. Um, Alien, fucking Sigourney Weaver's hot, and it's a good movie.
Fair.
Uh, and The Thing, I just genuinely fucking love body horror, and The Thing has some of the best body horror out there.
Fair enough. I have a real big.
Eraserhead is also in that mix of movies, by the way.
I need to see the full of Eraserhead. That's like one of those movies that I should have seen by now, but I've only seen like most of.
Would you believe it's the only David Lynch movie I've watched?
Yeah, that's like the one that almost everyone has watched if they've watched anything that's not Twin Peaks.
I own Twin Peaks on a box set and I haven't watched it.
Me too. Me too.
Maybe that's our side podcast.
You know who loves Twin Peaks?
My mom.
Corey.
Oh,
Corey's been
all
wanting to
right.
watch Twin Peaks for years.
We can get my mom and Corey on this one.
We'll just release it on the Dissonant Waves channel, but it's completely separate.
Yeah.
But I have a real big soft spot for movies, particularly horror movies that are realistic. Kind of the everything is the same, but like what if there was a demon? Or what if there was a possession? But everything else is the same. You would treat everything else as if you were real humans going through the situation. But we're just accepting that, okay, in the end of the day, there's this one change. And I think that's really, really effective. Especially because the movie is so good at delving into like character lives and developing a sense of place. There's just so many cool details and things that are just mentioned and just kind of like in passing that build believability. Like, I love Ellen Burstyn. She's like my favorite actress ever. And just her character just being like a casual celebrity, like a famous actor. Manny.
Yeah.
Cat causing trouble. Anyway.
They do that.
Yeah, there's that. I think there's, Reagan as a 12-year-old comes across as very intelligent and very, like, adult in certain ways.
Yeah.
Like, Linda Blair's a really good actor. And just, like, the different, like...
she is.
The different characters that come across and just, like, the way the tension builds. Like, the director's cut had a really interesting scene that is obviously cut from the original version where the first step in getting Reagan treated, they say that she has like some form of like ADHD essentially, and they give her Ritalin.
Mm-hmm.
And
not our Ritalin,
right? But the original Ritalin that he's named for.
Yes.
And I can see why this scene is cut from the movie and that it doesn't super do a lot. It just is another beat of like, okay, we're going to the hospital to get a diagnosis. We have other scenes like this. The reason I really like it though is because it really establishes the sense of these doctors don't actually know, and so they're just kind of diagnosing and going with it as they kind of like think, and it makes the credibility a lot weaker. That you're more questioning like, do they actually have an idea of what's going on, or is it really just possession? Where I think in the theatrical cut, they're a little bit more bewildered. They feel a little bit more authoritative, and Ellen Burstyn's character is a little more. It seems a little more hysterical when she's like kind of getting tired of it. Where I feel like that extra scene, kind of you get tired of it with her. You're there with her emotionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are some things I really like about the movie. There are also just really interesting stuff about the way things are shot, and that like things just kind of happen, and they don't really focus on it too much. There aren't like many musical stings. There aren't many like extreme close-ups of things.
No.
Like I feel like a lot of horror movies would definitely focus on, ooh, get the reaction, get this, get that. Again, realism is kind of the idea.
Yeah. Something I'd like to posit that I've always thought is that horror and comedy are two sides of the same coin. I feel like writing sketch comedy or like just a comedy scene in general has the same sort of like build up and payoff as a horror scene in a way.
I could see that. I think if you go off of that, horror is written much more not as well in a way, because I feel like everyone's building up horror to be a certain thing, and comedy is usually given a little bit more room to breathe because there's so many different styles of comedy, and there are different styles of horror. But there is something to be said for that movie that you find casually funny, like there were just jokes happening, but you're not always expecting it. And that's what I feel like horror is lacking sometimes, and that this movie provides is kind of like an unsettling atmosphere and reasons to be afraid more than just, oh, I'm expecting the jump scare, I'm expecting this, I'm expecting that.
Yeah, it's a slow burn.
Which, the way I like to describe it is that The Exorcist is a drama that happens to also be a horror movie.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. This is very much a drama.
And that's why I like it more than most horror movies, is that it feels like it has stuff in it. It's its own thing, in the way that like Logan as a superhero movie is a movie that happens to be about superheroes.
Yeah.
It's got its
I
own
have
shit.
not seen Logan, I'll admit.
That's fine. But having its own shit, having like its own story to follow, and you're not focused on like, oh man, where's the jump scare? Where's the musical sting? Who's gonna die first? It doesn't really matter.
No, that's actually quite a big reason why I like The Thing, is because it focuses more on the mystery than the actual horror. Like, yes, there are the fantastic body horror elements, but a big part of the story is the mystery and solving it.
That's why I like The Ring as well.
That's one I also need to watch, and Ringu.
Yes, I like The Ring more than Ringu personally, because The Ring feels also very realistic in its way of just this woman's trying to figure out what's going on, and her family is getting involved, and this happens, and it's all unfolding in a way that is very mystery and investigative, but done in a way that you could conceivably see yourself doing if you were in that situation, if you felt compelled to investigate.
Yeah.
I guess I just really like mysteries at the end of the day, and a horror movie that can pull off a really good mystery is probably just up my alley, which is why I should probably watch The Thing.
You would love The Thing. You would love The Thing.
I guess it's one of those things where it's like The Thing has been talked up so much in my life now that I feel like it cannot compare to the legacy it has.
I the first time I saw the remake of The Thing, or the reboot, or the whatever the fuck, the weird one that was like fairly recent. Before I saw the original thing, and like knowing that it was like all this hyped up thing, but I still fucking loved it. It's a phenomenal movie. We should have thrown in The Thing this week, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I would have had to found a DVD, but maybe I could have found a link somewhere. I don't know. It could have worked.
I could have found you a link.
But yeah. Exorcist, it is often considered one of the best films ever made. It was a really important, like, high-grossing R-rated movie. It was beloved in its time. It was considered one of the scariest movies ever made.
Yeah,
that's neither here nor there. Like, it's
my father actually has a story related to The Exorcist.
Yeah,
it was actually about The Exorcist 3. Okay. But it feels relevant enough to tell the secondhand story.
Sure.
And he went and saw The Exorcist 3 with a girl, I think it was. And he was driving home, and he lived in the country.
Hmm.
and he remembered being so scared that he waited in his car for his mother to come out of the house and like just wave him in.
How old was he?
Like 18, 19.
Wild.
Yeah.
I also read the book of Exorcist 3. It was pretty good, but not as good as the first one.
I'll admit I have not seen Exorcist 3. I've only seen the first one. I know to skip 2.
2 is super interesting if you like weird, like a director really going for it in a way that just misfires completely. It's like 70s Inception.
All right.
And 3 is interesting. I need to see the original cut that got released a few years ago, but it has a really really good jump scare that is worth it.
All right.
But it's so different from this one. It's a more of
Yeah.
a modern horror movie where this is this to me, like, not to get all fucking pretentious, is like elegant and regal in a way.
No, I get it. It is.
Like, to live in a world where taking like the Catholic religion at full force and just going with it is something that you could conceivably do. And like the idea of like
Yeah.
an exorcism is like a topic you could just like make a whole movie about and not like do it ironically or anything.
Yeah.
Like, that feels so alien now because we're so jaded and so like used to like, oh yes, they'll just do an exorcism. Oh yes, Catholic priests, you know how they are.
There's a joke I could make there that I'm not going to.
Trying to find another thing
Fill in the joke, listeners. We trust you to be smart enough.
well, there is something, because I'm sure you know of because you know there was the other father in the movie besides Father Karras and Father Merrin.
Yes.
There was the third one that played the piano and was obviously gay.
Yes.
That was a real priest.
Oh wow. I didn't know that.
He was a real priest, and believe it or not, in 2019, allegations came out against him.
It's always those because my priest, believe it or not, very very much the same way, flamboyant gay guy. Whenever he was out of the frock, as they say, I'm sure he was wearing Hawaiian shirts, and just like $3 bill allegations came out about him about the same time, and then he died.
Yeah, this guy lived to be 91 and died in 2023. But like, you know, he does the role really well, and
Yeah.
it's just a bummer that it's like, yeah, but he really was a Catholic priest.
Yep.
I like there's a certain innocence and naivete in like looking at like, oh, doing like Catholic religion stuff seriously as someone who grew up Catholic. It's weird to see almost.
Yeah.
It's like,
It is. I
because
feel like I feel like us being Catholic, or like lapsed Catholic, I guess, or whatever. I don't really know. We haven't really talked religion before, um,
I'm
but
an atheist agnostic. I just don't care anymore.
that's where I'm at too. But like seeing like all of that, because like I grew up in the church, and like it freaks me out a little bit on an extra level, I'll admit.
Yeah, that's fair. It feels weird. Like I don't know if it freaks me out necessarily, but it feels weird. It feels in a strange way kind of like home, or at least familiar, but not in a good way.
Yeah,
But it also, it feels, like you can relate a little bit more watching Father Karras, deal with like Catholic stuff.
yeah,
And like, it's about him, whether or not he has like faith in religion anymore, or whether he's losing his faith in religion. And personal life aside, him going through this stuff with his mother is really hard hitting at the moment for me. But
hmm yeah,
it's interesting to see a point where a priest could be a main character in a movie and could be so easily relatable. I think Jason Lee
yeah,
does a really good job at portraying the kind of the questioning and the doubt, but also the seriousness and like the I'm taking my job seriously, but I also have like civic and moral questions about it kind of role.
hmm
And then you have that against the interesting thing about these, like the cops in these movies, like Kinderman as the one lone detective in this one. It's kind of a joke, kind of a Columbo, but he also doesn't really do
I,
anything.
yeah.
it's almost kind of funny that he's like trying to solve the murder, and it's like, well, we know what the answer is, but again, if you're going for realism, there would be a cop.
There would always be a cop.
Instead, he's just talking about, hey, you want to go see movies? I like movies.
Yeah.
And they're just like calling out like, yeah, let's go see this movie with Jackie Gleason and Lucille Ball. And it's like that was not a real thing, but they sure make it sound like it is.
They do.
And that's fun. I like that.
Yeah. The Exorcist is a really fucking good movie.
And we're not even really talking about, oh yeah, the girl's possessed and the demon comes and she says the things and all the lewd stuff that she's made to do.
It's honestly the most boring part of The Exorcist. I mean, just because it's been like, I'm sure this is like a Seinfeld isn't funny sort of phenomenon, but I feel like I've seen the plot of Girl Possessed so many times at this point that it's almost just the window dressing.
And I think it was smart of the movie to do that.
Yeah.
Like, the thing I think that a lot of movies that get inspiration from The Exorcist missed, and this is probably a combination of, modern movie standards and what, studios or producers want from movies, is like, it doesn't have to be the A-plot. And it doesn't have to move that fast. Like, The Exorcist is a slow burn, but The Exorcist also moves fast in really interesting ways. Weeks will go by in the span of shots. They'll take an X-ray, and then they'll show you the X-ray, and they'll imply that it's been at least a week.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a real economy to that filmmaking that is super interesting and is probably still a good lesson to learn today. But it's also countered by it's rather slow in comparison to like a horror movie now. That's we're so in the world of everything is kind of a comedy, everything is kind of jaded, everything is you're always in on the joke.
Yeah.
That it's nice to unplug and watch something that's meant to be as real as it gets.
Yeah.
I just fucking love the way the 70s look on the film. It just looks so fucking real.
There's just something about the 70s that feels extra magic.
Like, if it really feels like a window. Like, I could just fucking pop my head through and I'm there. Wish you would just do more on-site shooting. I wish the people would do lighting the way they did it back then and just colors.
People need to fucking learn how to color grade. Color grading is a lost art. Everything looks like shit these days.
Yeah, everything's digital. Everything is... You can adjust it with your TV. But no. Like, lighting effects and coloring effects are all super important.
Yes.
And the way that, things get shot now to, like, minimize those things and only do, like, real obvious, like, lighting changes and whatnot, it's... You can be a little more expressionistic. It's fine.
Yes.
Don't worry about it.
You can fuck around with it. Film is art. And we seem to be forgetting that.
Yeah.
Like, so down to the last pixel, it's art.
I'm so worried about it being a piece of media that can be consumed. That's easy to forget. Like, oh yeah, even back in the 70s when they were making like these mainstream, like really popular books in the movies, they were still going for it. They were still adapting like this really controversial, hard hitting book. Like, this is like the progenitor of like. People were fainting in the theaters or vomiting in the theaters and a lot of that shit.
Yeah.
And, everyone wants to be super PC and mainstream and not ruffle any feathers. And I feel like a fucking old man saying shit like this, but like...
In a way, you are right. And I will back this up with me being 4 years younger than you and hoping that this hits because I'm only 25 and I'm still Gen Z, damn it. But the people need to just loosen up a little bit. You can take a joke now and then.
Like watching All in the Family back in the day to really get into it. Like that was a show all about the central guy is a fucking bigot.
Yeah.
And it's funny to see the way in which he interacts with the world and he's a bigot and he's stupid.
Yes.
And you're siding with the people around him that are obviously smarter and more well-tempered than he is, but that kind of media literacy gets lost, I feel like, and they're like, oh, the bigot man is funny and he has good points. It's like, that's not the point.
Broken clock is right twice a day.
And I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. I'm about half to 2/3 of the way through this joint, maybe 3/5. I don't know. It's dark out.
That actually segues into something I want to talk about with cruising. So, how are you feeling about The Exorcist? Anything else you super want to say?
No, other than if you somehow haven't seen The Exorcist, go watch The Exorcist.
Yeah, we're not the most film savvy, film talky podcast because that's not really our main bag. And so sometimes I feel bad
No,
that we're not doing it the most justice. But like, I've done film
we're a music
podcasts.
podcast.
Yeah, we're a music podcast. I've done film podcasts. They can be fun. This is just like a weird side project of a side project that we're doing. So just give us some slack.
Yeah,
Let's bring cruising into the conversation because I think cruising is a really kind of exemplifies what I'm talking about. Because cruising
yeah,
was very controversial even for the time for how it depicts gay culture and the S&M scene. And I go to bars like kind of like what they feature in cruising. I've seen shit. It's not exactly like that, but also the 80s were a much different time for gay culture,
yeah,
and where sex was much more prevalent in clubs like that were probably a bit more risque like that. But is gay culture represented well in the film? It's an open-ended question, I feel.
yeah. Honestly, I think gay culture in this movie is presented exactly as a part of gay culture is.
What do you mean?
Like I feel like I don't this might be the joint hitting, but I feel like it's just a stark look at an aspect of it that it used to have. Like I know I've read a bunch of about like the 80s gay scene because it interests me, and I had an uncle who died from it,
Yeah.
or a great uncle I should say. And it's pretty accurate, I'd say.
To what the stories are, yes, it seems rather accurate.
Yeah, and it's just kind of a naked look at it in a way, and it doesn't really paint it in a light.
Which is what it shares with The Exorcist, and then it tries to go realistic with it and really show
Yeah,
the way things were and kind of capture the scene, capture the moment. Which is really important now because I think, it's one of the few films, especially one of the few major films that was willing to
yes.
capture that stuff and preserve it. Like,
Like there's the hanky code mentioned.
yes. And it's very funny that like he asks about it and then he tries to participate in it, and then it's like he just does it wrong right away.
Yeah.
Like, I just like to watch. Don't wear the fucking hanky, you asshole. Also, it's very funny that cruising. It's a detective story about a cop that goes undercover in the S&M world in New York in 1980 to find a serial killer of gay men in the scene. Al
Yes.
Pacino plays the detective, and it's kind of an open end into like whether or not he's into it. Is he also a killer? What's going on?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like the main thing of it, and like the thing that was famous for at the time was how much it showed the S&M scene. There are reportedly 40 minutes that were edited out of the movie that were just that stuff. Like there was just
Oh man.
more of the bars, more of the sex, more of the like Al Pacino probably doing more of it too.
So here's the question I gotta ask: Do we think that Al Pacino himself fell into this role just kind of naturally as he started to like it? Because I feel like if 40 minutes of it were cut,
I mean, what? Wait, can you rephrase that? I'm not sure what you mean.
I need to stop smoking this. 1 second. Do we think that old Al here is getting a little too into it?
No, I don't, and that's like my main weird thing with the movie. Is the movie is really interestingly careful about like not like how do I phrase this? It does not delve deeply into like the interior life of the cop.
No.
You get some scenes where he talks to his girlfriend and he talks about, I'm having a real rough time. I'm having a real rough time. But you
Yeah.
mostly get Al Pacino, like, going to bars, looking, occasionally participating, and a lot of just long stares and a lot of long, you're just like, is he enjoying it? Is he not enjoying it? It really, really leaves it open ended to such a degree that it almost feels like they cut it out.
Yeah. I could see that.
Like, you ever heard of the Kuleshov test? Um,
No.
it's like an old filmmaking thing. Like, I think like Hitchcock and people talked about it, where you would show a strip of film of a man looking, and after that, you would cut to a bowl of soup, and you're like, "Oh, that man's hungry." Or then you could show a baby, and you're like, "Oh, he's a proud father." You would show a death, like, "Oh, he's in mourning." And realistically, it's the same shot, but the shot after it
Yeah.
is what colors the interpretation of that shot. And it makes you kind of believe or look at it in a certain way that lines up with kind of your perceptions and how you would interpret it. Like, well, he must be upset, so that's why he looks like that. And I think this movie does a really interesting thing where it almost relies exclusively on that, where it's like you gotta just kind of interpret what Al Pacino is doing, like what he's portraying this character to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Now that I think about it.
What I've seen of Serpico, he's super passionate, he's super into it. You've seen other movies, like you've seen Al Pacino movies where he's like over the top sometimes, even in fucking Jack and Jill. See the same
Yeah,
shit.
I was waiting for one of us to bring up Jack and Jill.
But I bring it up because like he's not subdued, and in this movie he's like super subdued.
Yeah.
And like there's something to that. Like he doesn't super play like, oh, he's a patrolman in his late 20s. Uh-huh, sure. But it works just enough for you to get by. But then it's this weird thing of he's in this scene, but like I feel like most movies and like that would be about this would try to be like, oh, he's disgusted by it, but then he learns to love it, or he's really into it and he learns it, but he learns more about himself. You know,
Yeah.
this is not interested in telling either of those stories. This is very much a he's in this scene now, and he's just living it.
Yeah.
And it's such a weird, unique thing. I don't know if I fully like it, but it's interesting.
It varies. It's very interesting.
And you know, there was a movie that was made about the missing 40 minutes interior leather bar. James Franco made it. Yeah. So if you want to watch a James Franco movie in 2024, that is out there. But you know,
Yeah.
but I mean, you're not as much of a film person as I am. Like, what do you get from William Friedkin knowing that he made both of these movies less than 10 years apart?
He had some very confused feelings about the Catholic Church,
Yeah,
and this almost feels like a movie that somebody would make for being scolded for being queer, and I don't know where I'm going for this in like a Catholic family,
yeah.
like almost in defiance of. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it.
Like a dependence of some sort.
Maybe um, it's very interesting, and he seems like an interesting fellow. I'll say that.
So is we have not mentioned it yet, but like the guy's name is Steve Burns.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
I'm trying to think of other Steve Burns.
isn't that the Blue's Clues guy?
Um,
Yes, it is.
oh my god.
Yeah, that's Steve from Blue's Clues. This happens to be Steve Burns.
I don't know. I'm picturing Steve from Blue's Clues in this role, and I'm just fucking losing it.
I mean, he would have been like 7 years old when that movie was made. So
Yeah.
It's unlikely he was a inspiration naming wise, especially because the novel came beforehand. But you know,
Yeah.
fun to imagine that somewhere along the line they heard that there was this kid named Stephen Burns.
Yes.
But other things I actually do want to talk about with this, with Cruising specifically, because you know, Cruising is more remembered as a controversial film, and in some circles, it's like considered a bad film, nominated for Razzies and all that stuff. I don't think it's bad like that.
No.
I think it's confused, and I think it's a lacking film, but that's because it was definitely edited. Like
Yeah.
there should be more. There's not, but
I now knowing that there's a whole other 40 minutes to this movie, I want to see those extra 40 minutes and I want to see how that fits in.
yeah, like just even as like a look at gay culture at the time.
Yeah. One of these days we gotta get the whole gang together and get on Tabletop Simulator and play this game from the 80s that somebody archived called Game Monopoly,
Okay,
because it's just Monopoly but in 80s gay culture. And
interesting.
they replaced the $5 bill with a $3 bill.
Oh, I like that. That's very fun.
Yes. But I feel like that would be a fun off the wall kind of bonus minisode.
That would be very fun. I like that a lot. Other things I do want to mention with this movie, it bugs me to no end that I think they got the wrong guy.
Yeah,
One
I
hundred
could see
percent.
that.
100%. The guy that they arrest at the end of the movie, being the serial killer, is not the person that, like, even on a literal sense, it's not the same actor,
No.
and that makes me believe it's not meant to be the same person. Like, yes, they got him on like like, oh, the knife was the same, yada yada yada. He has motive and he's crazy or whatever, but that all seemed like you know
Happenstance.
circumstantial happenstance, perfect, because they just went through a whole part of the movie where they were going after somebody else who had the same
Yeah.
kind of knife, but was then like, well, he couldn't have been there. It wasn't him.
Yes.
And like this guy, yeah, he had more evidence painting him in a way, but like the guy's voice was deeper. He looked different enough that it's like it kind of leaves that ambiguity. Like maybe he isn't the right guy,
Yeah.
and I really believe he's not. And I don't think that Pacino is meant to be a killer in the movie. I don't think Steve Burns kills anyone or whatever.
No.
I don't even think it's like a thing of like he's grown to like the scene. He's gay now. Like I don't think the movie really shows that at all. I just think
No,
go ahead.
he does go back to his girlfriend.
Right, but there's that longing look at the end of the movie where he's just staring into the mirror and it juxtaposes the skyline and whatever.
Hmm.
And it's meant to be like, well, what is he feeling? And like the prevailing theories are he's the killer, he's gay, yada yada, and I don't think it's any of that. I think it's just that it was a really
He's
intense
he's proud to make detective is kind of how I read it.
proud to make detective, and they're like, and it was a really intense thing that he had to do.
Yeah.
And I think he has doubts about whether it was all done the right way, because there's like a really there's like a scene where he's undercover and he's taking some guy back to his apartment, and they get taken in because they think it's the guy, and he gets slapped around by somebody. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know if I can do this. This is a lot. Like, well, yeah, if you're undercover, you kind of got to make it look realistic so you're not found out.
Yeah, man. Fist that guy in the club.
Get tied up and get fisted too. Come on.
Yeah.
This is a movie. Like the funny thing though, going back to what we were talking about as we started talking about this definitely cannot be made today.
No.
And it's funny because it's like you think this would be very progressive to make today, and like that like people would be all for it, but we're weirdly like more sexually repressed now in some ways. I mean, we're back then.
Yeah.
It was easier to say that this is just a subculture and there's a murder mystery happening inside of it, and it was controversial, so it actually sold.
Yeah.
Nine of fucking right wing groups everywhere trying to get it pulled from theaters and shit.
Unsurprising.
Uh, what did you learn from queer culture of the 80s?
I'm trying to think of anything specific. Um because as aware, as I made aware prior, I'm pretty well versed in '80s gay culture,
That's
but
fair.
I don't know. I I that I guess that there was a string of murders that happened uh, in real life that this was based on. And
I mean, that's fair. I think it's interesting, kind of comparing what the scene was like back then to like what I've seen of the scene now, where yeah, you can still see sex happening, but people are more interested in just talking and vibing. Some people will dance, but like it's not wall to wall dudes like I guess it used to be. I think, and then that part of that's probably because you can just have sex now, and it's not like you're gonna get arrested.
yeah,
You can just be in a relationship, it's fine.
yeah,
And so maybe the needs and the wants aren't the same anymore, and so it's actually more relaxed. But that was the most interesting thing. It was like it's so hypersexualized in a way because that was the only outlet that people had,
yeah.
and now it's just you can just go to a leather bar and have fun and just see it.
I don't even know if there's a leather bar in my city. There probably is.
I mean,
I'll have to do some research.
if not your city, then somewhere in New York.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a leather bar. There's a leather bar in New York. I like we it confirmed in this movie.
Yes.
But is there a leather bar in my neck of the woods? I'm not sure.
I will Google it right now.
I'm not versed in bar culture. I work at a bar technically, but I'm not versed in bar culture. I guess it would be more accurate to say the restaurant I work at has a bar, as opposed to I work at a bar. And we definitely do not have leather night.
Do you have cop night though?
Cock night?
Cop nights.
No.
Let's see. I looked up gay bar in your city, and it's not show. It popped up something, but I don't think it's a gay bar.
Let me Google gay bar my city. Let's
Oh, here's one for Long Island.
see here. Okay, here's a Reddit thread.
Oh,
Okay, there is not a no explicit gay bar, but one place is kind of the default gay bar.
I see. So they picked one.
Yeah, which you think in a pretty big college town they'd have a gay bar.
Yeah, but New York City is how far away though, right?
3 hours, 4 hours.
Fair.
Pittsburgh's closer, or no, Philly's closer.
I'm sure there are gay bars in Philly.
There are gay bars in Philly, I'm sure. But it's weird to think I'm closer to Philly than New York City. Anyways, New York City is wonderfully shot in this movie.
Yes, like Georgetown was shot in The Exorcist, New York is also very well shot in this. Again, I really like the realism. I like them being on location and just being in the city. There's a certain magic to how architecture looks and how city streets look. They just don't
There
have that now.
is no,
And I think movies would be much more interesting if there was kind of that focus on that stuff again. Like really
yeah,
establishing like cities and areas like that as like a character in the film. Of course, one of the internet search ideas was gay bar, your city, obituaries. Like, what fucking obituaries are you gonna fucking give me?
there must have been a gay bar, but it died.
It's just giving me recent.
I,
It's just giving me recent obituaries for your area
I don't know why that's so funny right now.
because you're the joint in.
Well, like 2/3 of one.
But yeah, cruising.
Cruising.
Interesting watch. It's not. It's not the same level of quality as The Exorcist,
No, it's not.
but it's not a bad movie. It's just very limited. It's stunted in a way. But I think if you like history and you like film, it's worth watching at least once.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm gonna ask my father if he's ever seen it.
I'd be very interested to know about that.
Because I feel like it could be either a yes because he like does deep dives on actors all the time and like watches like every it wouldn't surprise me if he's seen every Al Pacino movie. Like including this one. So I need to ask him. But I could also see him having no idea what this movie is about.
See, okay, you say that, and I've done the deep actor dive on Clint Eastwood.
Yes.
So there is a Clint Eastwood movie that is kind of like this. It's not the same. It's more of a straight thing, but it's called Tightrope, and it's Clint Eastwood kind of dealing with the straight S&M scene
All right.
and whether or not he's actually kind of interested in it or not. Actually, no, there's some gay elements to it. I'm looking at a quick summary again. So we may have to also watch this one just to see a comparison.
Yeah.
Because the secret thing about Clint Eastwood movies, the thing that nobody really talks about, is that a lot of them are kind of also rans. Kind of the like, this was a really popular movie or a really like famous movie. We're gonna do one kind of like that a few years later, but like it's changed and it's also Clint Eastwood, so it's different.
Yeah.
I'd be very
All
interested to
right.
see how Tightrope compares to Cruising.
Well, there's our follow-up episode for the next horror movies we watch. Double
It's not
feature
really a
of.
horror movie though. It's more of a
I know, but I said horror movies, and you kind of just went with Cruising and The Exorcist because we're gonna watch The Thing and Tightrope.
That's fair. I mean, to be fair though, Cruising I think is kind of a horror movie. It's kind of shot like one. It's kind of positioned as one.
Yeah, but I feel like it leans to it's more. I feel like at its core, it's more a detective movie than a horror movie.
Sure. Which is kind of funny considering that The Exorcist is also very much a mystery movie, but instead it's not detectives, it's people being involved that are still doing the investigating and are still being affected by what's going on versus the sort of like detective who's above it all.
Hmm. I would also like to mention this is off topic, but I watched the first 40 minutes of this while I was in the dish pit.
How was that for you?
It was interesting, scraping away some stuck on smoked Gouda with while I was watching Al Pacino get fisted or
And
do the fisting rather.
and there were the scenes of like the cops being generally ineffective. I think that the portrayal of cops in this movie was actually very interesting.
Yes, it wasn't. It's not explicitly. It's not explicit propaganda.
No, and again, I think that goes back to like, did Al Pacino's character actually do much of anything?
Yeah,
Because like, as we find in the movie, even though he caught the killer supposedly, a different death happens at the end,
yeah,
and it's heavily implied that it's just a coincidence because of other things that happened in the movie. But maybe it's not.
maybe it is not.
So it's vague, it's open ended, and some of it works really well, and some of it I think is a little bit too much. It would probably still be like this even with the 40 minutes in. You may just have a more developed opinion about, is Al Pacino's character actually meant to be like queer now or something else?
Yeah, his grinder profile would definitely not have a profile picture.
And he'd be like, I just like to watch.
I have not ever used Grinder, so I can't really speak on Grinder outside of what I've seen on Twitter.
And of course, one of the major actors in Cruising, not to belittle actors' names, but his name is Richard Cox.
Dick Cox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some other famous actors. Edward O'Neill's in it. Paul Sorvino, famous cop guy in movies.
Yes.
Karen Allen from Animal House. James Remar, who I'm always a big fan of, shows up for a little bit. Post The Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
Well before his stint as Dexter's father.
Yep.
But yeah. Alright. Cruising done, I guess. Unless you have more to say.
I don't really. It's an interesting watch.
So now we go to our album that we covered. Tubular Bells 2. Starring Alan Rickman.
Yep.
You know how in the first one they announced the instruments? They did
They
it
do that
again.
again. This is not as good.
No, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
uh,
It doesn't follow the same structure as Tubular Bells with the like one long song. This is very definitely different songs.
Well, I mean, the first half kind of follows it.
Sort of, but
It's more sectioned off in different pieces. Like, but
yeah,
but those pieces I think could still be considered one song. Honestly.
not really Moonshine at the end.
No, but side two is kind of where they just go away from that and they just do other
Yeah,
songs.
yeah, that's fair. Side A is kind of its own thing.
It's a mini Tubular Bells.
Well, side A B rather, because this had to have been a four side.
No, this is a side one, side two.
Oh shit!
I guess it just must have been a 24 minute record.
Yeah,
Because what is it?
which it's 58 minutes.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
It's also let's be real. This was made in '92, so like
it was a CD.
yeah.
I wonder if it ever was on vinyl.
Discog. Let's see. Mike Oldfield, Tubular Bells 2 on Discogs.
Here,
There was an
okay.
LP in 2002. Okay, there was an LP in Croatia.
There was a re-release at some point, a repressing.
A lot of cassettes. This
Um,
is prime cassette.
yes. Let's see here. In Discogs.
I'm getting mostly cassettes. But there was
I
an
forget
LP.
about cassettes.
There was an LP in Europe. That's for sure.
Yes.
In the way that Tubular Bells 1 was the founding of Virgin Records, this was made as soon as Mike Oldfield got off Virgin Records.
Yeah.
He grew to not like what was happening with Virgin Records, and as soon as he was able to leave, he did. Richard Branson may have
That
started his career, but it did not end that way.
his career is fucking weird too.
I believe it. He was
Like one of his singles is just like this comedy bit about a shitty bull rider.
that checks out. Like, did you listen to fucking Altered State?
Yeah.
What the fuck was that?
What the fuck was that?
Just fucking like spoken parts, but it's like a weird comedy thing, but kind of only a little bit.
Yeah.
Like it's like a cartoon is playing in the background, but then also some like nice like choral elements also in the same song.
I'm trying to find the shitty bull rider. It's like Don something.
But I guess the thing to talk about with Tubular Bells 2 is that it starts as it's a kind of like a remix of the original.
Yeah.
They use the first track, The Sentinel, as to kind of introduce and kind of yes, you know the Tubular Bells theme. Cool, you've seen The Exorcist. Here is that theme done in new ways that you'll kind of recognize, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
Can you clarify more as to like was he doing it in reverse? Was he just like doing different key
Uh
arrangements?
it he was um it felt like he was just riffing off of Tubular Bells. Like the main kind of like Tubular Bells riff you hear at the beginning, it's not the same riff. It's similar enough that you're like, "Oh, that's Tubular Bells," but it's not actually Tubular Bells.
I believe that. Yeah, instead it starts there, but by the time you get to the other tracks, it really goes on its own way.
Yes.
That kind of works. I'm interested in the different sounds of the album.
It's interesting. Honestly, listening to this made me want to check out the other Tubular Bells
Tubular
because the
Bells
dude's
3.
yeah, and I think there's also a Tubular Bells 4.
There's Tubular Bells 2003. It's a digital re-recording of the original Tubular.
Let's see here. I'm just gonna scroll his YouTube music page real quick.
I think
Um,
I think just going to Tubular Bells 3 and then going backwards to 2003 would be a fun thing to do
yeah,
eventually.
there was also the 50th anniversary was released last year, and there is apparently a Tubular Bells 4.
Oh boy. There's an orchestral album.
Let's see here. I'm just gonna Google Tubular Bells 4. I feel like I've also seen it on cassette. Oh, it's an 8-minute track release that was part of that was it was only on the 50th anniversary. It was oh, okay. This is actually kind of interesting because it was gonna be there was gonna be a Tubular Bells 4,
Uh-huh.
but he's just like, nah, and I'm done with music. The last piece he's ever recorded, according to him.
He apparently did a remix cover of the X-Files theme.
Okay, okay.
That's rather interesting. I could see where you could add some Mike Oldfield to that.
Yeah, I could too.
Okay, so the Tubular Bells 50th anniversary has the 8-minute track Introduction to Tubular Bells 4,
Yes. Yes.
which was a demo,
And the last thing he ever recorded because he's retired since.
supposedly.
Yes.
Will he stick to it? That's another question.
Yes. Okay, there is also a technical Tubular Bells 4, it looks like. The Millennium Bell.
The Millennium Bell. Did he make that?
98 or 99.
Okay,
Well,
yeah.
it's borrows its name from the dawning of the third millennium and from being the fourth installment of Oldfield's Tubular Bells series. It is the most recent entry in the Tubular Bells series to feature an all-new material. It was the main work performed at Oldfield concert for Berlin New Year's celebrations on the 31st of December 1999.
That's fun. It's so he did Tubular Bells 1 in the 70s, 2 in 90 like 2 93, 3 in 98 and 4 in 99.
Yeah,
He got really into it.
that he did.
From what I'm seeing, it's 3 and 4 are very different. Like they definitely lean
Yeah,
more into his weird world music sensibilities.
that would be interesting. I'm just looking through because like I'm scrolling through his thing, his page on streaming, and it's just Tubular Bells, Tubular Bells, Tubular Bells. Like there's a Tubular Bells Digital Deluxe edition from 2009, which is 3 hours and 42 minutes long. Holy shit!
Wow.
The Mike Oldfield collection. It's an hour and 55 minutes, and it's got looks like a good collection of a bunch of them. And then there's the digital box set, which is 2 hours and 52 minutes. And then there's a remix album by a guy named York. It looks like it's a collaboration between them, and it's a remix of a bunch of Tubular Bells stuff and just general Oldfield stuff. Like there's Tubular Bells 2, I'm a Dawn, Guilty, the original Tubular. Fuck, there's a lot here.
Interesting. I wonder what the last album sounds like.
The Return to Amadan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because it's a sequel to his third album, Amadon.
yes. Which maybe there's a Amadan and Amagama double feature in our future on the podcast at some point.
Is there a return to Amagama?
There's not a return to Amagama, but it would be an excuse to talk about Pink Floyd's Amagama.
That's very fair. As usual, when we do weird minisodes, we're just like, what else can we do?
Yeah, like I feel like that's a good tradition of the minisode is just to like plan future minisodes we never do.
Yeah, that's certainly something we've done a lot recently.
Yeah,
I mean, Mike Oldfield's interesting. He's politically rather toxic, but
yeah. But I felt like covering Tubular Bells 2 would be just interesting because like who releases an album number 2?
Led
Like
Zeppelin.
besides Zeppelin.
Um,
And when Zeppelin I feel doesn't count because they would they're self-titled number and then whereas this is an actual sequel to an album
that's fair. That's fair. He's only 71.
and he's released like 26 albums.
Well,
Fascinating.
yeah. I guess if you had to rank everything, how do you feel about all three things?
Uh Exorcist at the top, then we'll go Cruising Tubular Bells too.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
And
So
he did the video game too.
oh yeah.
No.
Tres Lunas.
Yeah, didn't Mini Me do a video about that?
He did.
Yeah, that's right. Weird. Weird, 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 weird.
Yes. Fascinating.
What were you gonna say?
Um, there's a soundtrack to Three Luna or Trace Lunas on YouTube Music, and weirdly, one of the songs is unavailable and it's a radio edit.
Yeah, that's his album post Millennium Bell before Tubular Bells '03.
Yes.
Maybe we bring Mini Me back on for that episode. That'd be very
Yeah.
funny. Just to
That
do the
would be.
soundtrack. Yeah. Exorcist, Cruising, Tubular Bells too. That's where I feel appropriate.
What was the Hall and Oates song that fucking Family Man? He wrote Family Man by Hall and Oates. Did you know that?
Mike Oldfield?
Yeah.
I did not know that. What else did
That
he do?
song bangs. Anyway, I'd we should throw some Hall and Oates on the podcast at some point.
You never mentioned how there was a lot of punk music in Cruising, like the Germs and stuff.
Oh yeah, that was also pretty cool to see. I'll be honest, a lot of this I just watched but didn't listen to because I heard the fucking faucet over.
That's also very fair. We did this in like 2 days.
Yeah.
So
and I had to watch half this in the dish pit.
You were still game to watch 2 movies though, so I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Well, I'm gonna be honest. I'd already seen The Exorcist this like a week ago, so I didn't watch it again. But it lined up.
It was meant to be. It was magical.
Yes, it was.
Me a new Halloween tradition: The Exorcist and Cruising back to back.
All right.
And then you just turn on some Tubular Bells.
Switch it up every year.
You see, pitch it up every year.
I said switch it up.
Oh.
On the Tubular Bells number.
And then one year you just do the Death Note theme.
Yeah. I vaguely remember that, and yeah.
That was just the whole thing. It was just the piano from Tubular Bells.
Yeah, I'm remembering now. I had kind of put that out of my memory. I've never watched Death Note, but I've definitely heard the theme.
I've watched Death Note plenty. It's noticeable. I don't know how they got away with it, but
yeah.
Anyway, I guess that'll do it for us this week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching a blank static image. Not blank, but just a static image of whatever I decide to make the episode art to be, Minisode art. Thanks, Strix, for being here. Ritz, I hope you're doing well on vacation. And
yeah.
Our stuff is in the description below. All the yada yadas, podcasts, socials. I guess we should do more on Blue Sky now or something.
Yeah, with the whole block thing.
Apparently Muskrat is using all the tweets out there to train an AI.
Yeah, Grok.
Yep. So yeah, you can see all that below. Thank you and have a good night.
Bye.
Hello everybody, we're back. This just in. There's another thing to talk about with Tubular Bells.
I cut out entirely there.
Oh.
I am so sorry.
We're back on. Look at this.
Tubular Beats.
Tubular Beats.
I mentioned that.
Oh, this is the York album you were talking about?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's less exciting. Well, here's a very disappointing letdown ending to this episode.
I didn't even know we were still recording.
I turned it back on just to talk about this.
Okay.
I thought I saw the collaboration with York, and then I saw this. I'm like, oh, this must be something else. But nope, this is it.
Nope, that is the collaboration with York.
Not Tom York, just York.
Not Tom York, just York.
Torsten Stenzel is York.
Never heard of him.
The German composer and producer. He's classically trained, but his roots are within the field of EDM.
Ah.
Well, anyway, that's it for real. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.